People over their cell phones. In the Holocaust, there's some off-duty metro worker with that. You see some kind of promotions with Holocaust. I mean, yes.
Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Shakita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So last week, we did not proceed further with the text. Instead, we had a walk through the qualifications of a fit student as they're set forth in Shankara's Vipassana. So we're now back where we were 2 weeks ago. So do you have the verse we're on at all?
We're on verse 5.
Verse 5. All right. Will you help us out, please?
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Nityam Matma Sarupam Hi Drishyam Tadvapi Ritagam Evam Yo Nishchaya Samya Viveko Vastunaha Save. Atman in itself is alone permanent. The seen is opposed to it. Such a settled conviction is truly known as discrimination.
So here, Shankara in this text is taking the first 2 qualifications of a fit student in reverse order. Viveka Chudamani, he does Viveka first and then Vairagya. So 2 weeks ago, we went into depth about Vairagya. Here he now describes Viveka, discrimination. And the discrimination we're talking about is the discrimination between the self and the not self, the seer and the seen, the subject and all the objects. So we have to firmly understand that. If it occurs in time and space, if it has qualities, if it has characteristics, if it has name and form, if it's confined to the waking or the dream or the deep sleep state or an altered state, ayahuasca or mushrooms or something like that. Most importantly, if it can be known as an object, that's not it. Atman is that by which everything is known, without which nothing can be known. The ultimate knower of everything. Gita, we have kshetra, kshetranya. Cha. The field and the knower of the field. Who is the knower of the field in all fields of experience? That is Atma. I was talking with a student on Friday. He says, well, Jim, is there something beyond this? How do I know this is it? This is self-realization, stuff like that. And I said, well, we have our 4 pramanas. What do the scriptures say? What do the great saints and sages say? What's your logical reasoning? What's your direct experience? I tell you, the self is difficult to realize, not because it's far away or the result of some extreme mental experience. It's difficult to realize because of its ordinariness. Think. If it is an eternal factor, it is always there. That's my understanding of ordinary. What's the most ordinary thing? You. When are you ever not you? So my doubt is, I superimpose stuff on that direct experience. And my friend on Friday, well, what he wanted was an ecstatic experience. I get that. That's a mind state. Okay, just know it for what it is. It's a form of worldly pleasure. Shrunahu, listen carefully. The seeker does spiritual practices so he can purify his mind and realize his self-nature. But the woman of wisdom may also be seen to be doing spiritual practices, but it does not add to her knowledge of the self. It's just the highest form of worldly pleasure. You get that? So I have friends, I'm going to go do a Vipassana retreat for 10 days. Sit for 10 days, hours a day, and come back. I say, do you know more self now? No, Jim. Did your mind become even more peaceful and open? Oh, yes. How long have you been back in the world? 5, 6 days now. Has it faded? Yes. Mind state. Nothing wrong with mind states. You want happiness? Cultivate a sattvic mind. Real simple. But you either see it or you don't. You either see Atma, that is myself, the word literally means, or you're confused about it. Any thoughts on this? Someone will come to me and say, oh, Jim, I dropped acid 20 years ago and I had this experience of the self, but I've lost it. Oh, you disappeared? You're not here anymore? Who's talking to me? Mm-hmm. Whatever you experienced, mind state. What is the result of ignorance? I have the non-apprehension of my self-nature, and then the subsequent misapprehension, I think I'm the body, which is an object of cognition. What is the result of knowledge? I have the apprehension in my mind, actually technically in the subtle intellect. Oh, I'm not the body. I'm that ground of being. Monday night, we had the introduction of my favorite term that points to the self. Comes from Yoga Vasishta, Chid Akash. That translated as the plenum of consciousness. Akasha simply means space or sky, the space of pure awareness. In a quiet mind, with your attentive faculty introverted, do something like focus on the triumph. Who hears? See, there's nothing there. Chid Akash. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Sadeva vasana tyagaha shamo ayamiti shabditaha nigraho brahmavrittani tanam dam ityabhidhi yatyate. Abandonment of desires at all times is called shama, and restraint of the external functions of the organs is called dhamma.
Yes. So we talked about this last week. Essentially, what we're talking about is tuning up the mind, keeping the mind at meditation, not only in our meditation seat, but while we're functioning in the world. And the mind is pushed outward in two ways. The first is I see an object of either desire or aversion here. My mind gushes out. Could be someone's beautiful body. It could be a desirable object, a car. It can be food, whatever it is. Oh, I see it, and the mind goes out, rubs all over. Shama is the capacity to keep it introverted, practically speaking. Try walking through nature. You can do this for 10 minutes in the beginning. You're doing very well. And you just look at a flower. or a tree, or a homeless person's tent, or a door. Don't let your perception of the objects cause your mind to extrovert. Capacity to do that's shama. The other thing that happens is your mind gets pushed out because of a memory and a past experience. Sitting there in meditation this morning, and I'm thinking, I think I'll make vegetable soup today. I'll have to go to the market and buy this, that, and the other thing. If I don't practice Dhamma, I'll spend the whole 20 minutes cooking the damn soup. Sound familiar? And if you get involved in that as a habit, the force of the past not only will impel you into thinking, create vrittis, but then you're going to start acting on it. I was talking with a young man on Sunday, and he is afflicted by sexual addiction. And he talks about, driving by the massage parlor that I go to, and can't help himself. No shama, no dhamma. Then after, and he uses this term acting out, it's not one of my favorites, but after he engages in the compulsive behavior, then his mind goes into what the psychologists call a shame spiral. Why did I do that? When will I ever learn? I am so weak. I'm a bad person. I'm disgusting. This is against all my morals. Any of you ever do that? Stop it. After the fact, self-abuse never changes our behavior, just makes us strengthen ego. We normally think of ego as, I'm the big shot. But ego was also, I'm the worst piece of poop. It's also ego. Usually it's, I'm the piece of shit that the whole world revolves around. We start by understanding where is the point of power. The point of power is when the thought or the craving arises. Before we act on it, before we go down the rabbit hole and the mind is spinning. Did we talk last week about Shankara's image of the child with a rubber ball at the temple? He says, when the child has the rubber ball and is playing at a temple with lots of stairs, if the ball bounces on the first step at the top, she can grab it. But if she doesn't, and it goes ka-chunk, 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 you're not going to stop it until the whole process is finished. So it's at that first thought that we have a chance of changing the flow of the thinking. The deep impression, the sanskara, the vasana. Two things you can do. Turn your mind to God. This is the great power of japa. In Gita, Krishna calls japa the king of yogas. I really like to make that vegetable soup. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. What you do? Or seva. Throw yourself into helping others. Call them up. This is Jim. I'm in my head today. Tell me about your life. And then you shut up and listen. It's not an opportunity for you to say, oh, I need to tell you about all my problems. No. Focus your attention on the other person. Physically do an act of service. And that can be something as simple as clean the house. Any thoughts on this?
It seems relatively easy for me to notice when my mind is going in these, like, when there's a desire or like when there's like a positive something that it's grasping onto, but then the aversion part is harder for me to like notice and deal with because it's like there's a negative space, you know what I mean? And so any, like, my typical aversion is to like cooking these days. So any tips for coming back from that?
Yep, get over your cheap self. Real simple. You have a duty to do. So simple. This is the point. People think if you have a mind state, it compels you into action. That's not true. It's just a mind state. Now, back to long meditation retreats. One of the things a long meditation retreat will prove to you is that mind states are not permanent. Mind states are not permanent. So we have to discern the difference between the indulgent tendency of the mind and the deep intuition. Kathopanishad, we talk about Shreyas and Preyas. Preyas, what's dear to me. This is what I want to do, and I don't want to do that. It's my inner 2-year-old. I mean, eat your dinner. No. That's what it is. It's the indulgent tendency of the mind. And we act contrary to it. The metaphysicians say change your thinking and your action will change. The 12-step people say act your way into right thinking. Yoga says yes. Both are true. But for something like an aversion to cooking, set yourself some tapas. Set yourself a goal. I'm going to not indulge in buying pre-made food or going out to a restaurant or ordering a pizza. I'm going to cook 4 days a week. Not 7, 4. Make it a little easier. See what I mean? And you make a commitment. It doesn't matter how I feel. I'm going to do it anyway.
Can I be a little practical?
Sure.
I do like to be there, but
You have to speak a little louder.
okay. Just prep ahead of time. So you shop one day and prep another day, and then cook another day, because otherwise it's so overwhelming to do a lot. I mean, you'll do it one day and maybe two, but not the third. But in that way, you have everything in the fridge for the week.
Okay. Whatever works. Find and ask for help.
Yeah.
That's always good. You know, we have Cecily with a suggestion. And believe me, she knows she's dealt with food issues. So, Shama and Dhamma. And the point is to keep the mind with this intense introversion and not be at the effect of the tyranny of the indulgent tendencies of mind. In Gita, one of the words we have to call this is yogarudha, mounting the steed of the mind, where we're no longer tyrannized by it. Next verse.
Vishayebhya paravrittihi paramo paratirhisa sahanam sarvadukhanam titiksha sa shubhamata. Turning away completely from all sense objects is the height of uparati, and the patient endurance of all sorrow or pain is known as titiksha, which is conducive to happiness.
So we went through these last week. Uparati is sense withdrawal. It is the same as what in Raja Yoga we call pratyahara. And there are several ways to look at it. The most common is when you're in meditation, you have to be able to withdraw your disturbance mechanism from sensory experience. People who, I can't meditate here, it's just too noisy. We have to learn to not be concerned with that. Or it's too hot, or it's too cold. Again, back to long meditation retreats. You've done Vipassana retreats, haven't you, Cecily?
Yes.
What do they tell you to do if your nose starts to itch?
Not scratch.
Watch it.
Yes. Yes. What happens if you start to scratch it?
Oh,
Then your elbow's going to itch. Then your knee's going to itch. Then your back's going to itch, etc. Because the mind goes, oh, this is a way to distract them. Sense withdrawal. Now, Shankara says the best sense withdrawal is when you're functioning in the world and your mind does not create but it peace by what you see, by what you don't see. Again, this is the culmination of this tuning up of the mind, this meditation in action. The other metaphor Shankara uses, it's like a wicker basket with water going through it. So let everything through. Titiksha, forbearance. Not getting caught up in my rights. Don't I have a right to be angry? What if I'm cheated? Many people can only motivate from anger or fear. It's very weird. Shankara says, let go of that stuff. Motivate from duty. This is what's right to do. Dharma. It's very interesting. I've studied a lot of scripture. I've never seen the scriptures talk about boundaries. I've never seen them talk about needs. I've never seen them talk about what are some of the other contemporary kinds of things we hear?
Rights.
Rights. You never hear rights, but you hear a lot about Dharma. Dharma here means more than just my duty. It means what's the correct action? What is the right path? So it's not about the British stiff upper lip duty. Yes, I'm going off to the front line and get killed because it's a stupid war, but it's my duty. I don't mean that kind of duty. It means doing the right thing. The Buddhists use the word dharma to talk about the path itself. So titiksha, the capacity to endure the vicissitudes of life, the pinpricks of life, without the need for redress or revenge. Next verse.
Nigamacharya Vakyeshu Bhakti Shraddhati Vishruta Chitte Kagrayam Tu Lakshye Samadhanamiti Smritam. The renowned Shraddha is to have full and implicit devotion in the sayings of the scriptures and the preceptor. To keep the single-pointed mind constantly on the truth, the goal, is known as samadhana.
Yes. So Shraddha is the next one, faith. We talked about last week, it not only is belief in things unseen, that's kind of the ordinary definition, but faith here that the scriptures are efficacious. Shankara in Vivekachudamani says we need to have the ability to argue for the scriptures and refute arguments against them. That doesn't mean on Facebook. Where does this argument take place? When do we have it? When we get discouraged. And the world says, why am I bothering to do this yoga shmoga stuff? Obviously, the answer is drugs, sex, and rock and roll. Or as Donald Trump says, this is true. At his first cabinet meeting, entire cabinet's there, he says, your job is on a daily basis to help me vanquish my enemies. Very interesting. Is that what the scriptures say is going to make you happy? And then faith in the teacher. It was a very interesting discussion in Tripura Rahasya. Jim, what if the teacher is not qualified? What if he's a charlatan? Well, if you have faith in the teacher, there's a chance that she can take you to the infinite. There's a chance that he can't. But if you don't have faith in the teacher, there's no chance of going to the end. So I always say you need to have a good bullshit detector. See whether the words of the Guru correspond to what the scriptures say. That's the first way to find out. Be aware of three things. If the Guru wants to have sex with you or is having sex with their disciples. If they're about money, give me your money, give me your money, give me your money. Or they've got power issues. They get in and micromanage people's lives. Surrender to me and I'm going to tell you what to do. You marry so-and-so. You do this, you do that. Come wash my windows. If the teacher has those afflictions, I'm not saying they're not a man or woman of wisdom. They're probably not effective as a teacher. You stay with the teacher as long as you're being fed. You'll know if it's time to move. You don't want to have false loyalties in this work. You always have to be aware when it's your own ego coming up. And the problems with the Guru are what the psychologists call transference. I'm not reacting to the Guru, I'm reacting to my father. I'm reacting to my mother. If we can surrender to the teacher and go where his mind goes, by this means is the reality made known. Samadhana, a peaceful state of mind when it rests in steady contemplation of the goal, and is not to be accomplished with any amount of mental oscillation. You read something in scripture or a commentary, or you watch a YouTube video. Wait a minute, that contradicts what I've heard and what I've read. Well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. It is not figure-outable. Follow the path as it's laid down in scripture. Follow the path as it's articulated by the great saints and sages. Follow the path according to your own logical reasoning. It is contrary to the values of the world. Just stay steady. Stay steady. I tell people, I'm a crappy yogi. I've made a ton of mistakes, supposedly. Gone off on all sorts of ridiculous side ventures in life. But I've been steadfast. 45 years. 46 years. Next verse.
Sansara bandhan nirmuktihi katham syaname dayanithe itiya sutrha buddhir vyaktapyasa mumukshata. O ocean of mercy, how can the liberation from this world and its bondage come to me? Such deep desire for liberation is termed mumukshutva.
Mumukshutva, being a mumukshu, someone with a burning desire, an intense desire for liberation. One of the things I say, self-realization is not difficult. Krishna says that. The Lord himself says, easy to perform. But it's very rare. And it's rare because nobody wants it. One of my favorite stories. The Swami goes to the householder's home for bhiksha, for dinner. And they eat dinner. And if you've been around the Chinmaya mission and some of the other traditions after dinner, the host family, they put a bunch of fruit on a thali. There's an envelope with a check in it. Did they do that around the mission when you were there?
I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, you give it to the Swami. The Swami takes the check, puts it in his pocket. Then he gives the fruit back as prasad. You know, oh, thank you, Swamiji. Thank you, Swamiji. And then the householder said, oh, Swamiji, you are so great. You have given up the world. And then Swami did a very interesting thing. He gets down on his knees and touches the householder's feet. And the householder says, no, Swamiji, and pulls him up. And the Swami says, no, you are the greater renunciant. I have given up the world, but you have given up infinite bliss. So we forget our priorities. Why is this important? If we go to the classic metaphor of the snake and the rope, we talk about adhyas, superimposition. The rope is there, and on a dark night, I mistake the wet rope. I step on it, and I go, oh, there's a snake. I have to be willing to give up my perception of the snake in order to see the rope. Likewise, the truth is, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The phenomenal world is an illusion. Oh, Jim, I want to see the rope, but I get so much fun out of kissing the snake. Oh, I love my snake. It's full of jewels. My unwillingness to give up my erroneous perceptions, attachments, aversions, identifications. A personal sense of self. I have to be willing to give it up in order to see the truth. Understand, I'm giving up something that's false. Listen carefully. Sometimes we talk about, I need to give up worldly pleasure and seek the bliss of the self. Well, I have news for you. There's no such thing as worldly pleasure. It does not exist. It is like the horns of a hare, or the child of a barren woman. We make it up. The only bliss, the only happiness is the mind coming home to the self. I can do that in a mediated fashion, meaning I use a medium, person, place, thing, or condition. Desire, object of desire, when they become one. Ramoda, point of pleasure, bliss. Or I can just let go of the world. Let the mind come home without the need of a medium. I can have a non-mediated, an immediate experience of the bliss of myself. Fool still thinks that person can make me happy. That person can rob me of my happiness. That object brings me pleasure. The absence of that object makes me miserable. It's all an illusion. It's like you open the food magazine and there's a picture of a chocolate cake. Can it bring you anything real? It's all these words, pictures. Mind goes out, that hurts. Mind comes home, feels good. So when I've gotten the sense of that, doesn't mean my desires disappear all at once. But Shankara says, at least don't embrace a rotting corpse thinking it's a beautiful bride. All right, next verse.
Ukta sadhana yuktena vichara purushena hi kartavyo jnana siddhyartha matmana shubhamichhata. Endowed with the above qualifications, one wishing for goodness should take up the inquiry for the purpose of gaining knowledge.
Yes. So the metaphor I use is slicing a ripe tomato. Go back to food again. So if I have a really fine ripened big beefsteak tomato and I have a dull knife and I go to try to slice the tomato, it squishes and goes. So the preparatory action before slicing the tomato is to sharpen the knife. Sharpen the knife. Now it's nice and sharp. Tomato slices easily. But if I get caught up in the preparatory exercises, and the Raja Yogis can get caught here. How much asana must I do? How much pranayama must I do? How much focus on the various chakras and energies and things like that? All these things are of value, but they're knife sharpening. Sharpening the knife. Tomatoes not sliced. Sharpen the knife some more. Man is still not sliced. Sharpen the knife some more. What's wrong with my yoga? Sharpen the knife some more. What's happening? Understand that there is a sequence of practice. All our various practices in the Raja Yoga tradition, in the Kundalini Yoga tradition, in Kriya Yoga, moral precepts, and becoming a Adhikari, a fit student, are preparatory. Their objective is to achieve a sattvic state of mind. Mind that is pure, mind that is clear, mind that is not agitated by its compulsive extroversion into the world. Then what do? The next process is Atma Vichara. Vichara comes from the root vich, which means to winnow, to separate the wheat from the chaff. We engage in this inquiry into the self. Koham. Who am I? What is my essential nature? And our basic tool at this point is this discrimination between the self and the not self, and our capacity to let go of our identification with the not self. In the Upanishads, this is called neti, neti, not iti, not iti. It's always paired. You don't say neti, and you don't say neti, neti, neti. It's always neti, neti. Why? Because there's two areas where we have to renounce. The first neti is the microcosm. I'm not the body. I'm not the prana. I'm not the mind. I'm not the intellect. I'm not the ego sense. I'm not even the darkness of ignorance. I am that pure Atma. And with the cosmos, ultimate reality is not the phenomenal world. It is not the total mind. It is not any of the gods. It's not even Ishvara, the total Vasana. It is Brahman, the ground of being. Prajnanam Brahma. Brahman is knowledge. Brahman is awareness. Brahman is consciousness. Now, that witnessing consciousness, that's the core of my being, and that Brahman, which is the ground of being of the whole universe, they are the same. I am Atma, Brahma. So this is the process of, we do this vicharena, by means of investigation. All right, next one.
Notpadyate vina jnanam vicharena sadhane yatha padartham bhanam hi prakashena vina vavichat. Just as perception of things cannot be without light, so too the dawn of knowledge is impossible here without inquiry.
So if I want to find my keys and I walk into my bedroom and the light is off, did I put them in the bowl on my dresser? Did I leave them on the desk? Is it over there on the nightstand? What did I do with my keys? My jeans are on the back of the chair. Did I leave my keys in my jeans pocket? What did I do with my keys? So if it's night and I'm gonna go out, what do I have to do before I go looking for my keys? Turn on the bedroom light. I cannot see the dresser or the desk or the nightstand or where I put my jeans. So just as I cannot find objects in the world without light, so too the self cannot be found except by means of investigation. This is the kind of process we're going to use. Do you see the tree over yonder? Yes, I see the tree. Now, do you see that uppermost branch that goes off to the right? Oh, yes, I see that branch. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see there's a leaf at the top of the branch, and it's false. So the part of the leaf closest to the branch is green, and it's the one with its brown on the tip. Do you see that leaf? Yes, yes, I see it. Now, lift your gaze 15 degrees and you will see the daytime crescent moon. Before we start, where's the daytime crescent moon? Is the moon out? I don't know. I don't see any moon. It's too difficult to see. So our investigation starts with perceiving something gross and seeable, and gets subtler and subtler and subtler. The other example I like to use, do you see that behind me there's a photograph of Swamiji? Do you see that it's in a wooden frame? I can see it's in a wooden frame. Do you see that there's a white mat? I always think I should have gotten an orange mat to match his robes. Then in the photograph itself, you see his kind of 70s glasses. You see that? Now, if you look down towards the bottom of the photo, it's faded over the years, but you can see he signed it for me. Can you see his signature? Do you see it? Do you see it, Cicely?
Yeah, barely.
Barely. Where is it?
Up shoulder.
Is that where it is?
Yeah.
See, it's so subtle. How many times have you been in this living room and not realized there's Swamiji's signature? So what did we do? We brought your attention first to something very gross. You can see the frame. A little more subtle, the mat. Then to the picture of Swamiji himself. And then, if you look at his left shoulder, you see the very faint signature. It's faded over the years. We investigate. So if I were to say, somewhere in this room is Swamiji's signature, where do you start to look? So also, where is the self? How can I find the self? So we're going to take you on a journey of investigation. Any thoughts on this? for those of you who are sharing this knowledge with others, to say the self in you is the self in all. The self in you is what God is. Probably doesn't help anybody very much. Making sense? If, on the other hand, you say, I'm going to play a little game called subject-object discrimination. Do you see the coffee cup? Yeah. You are the seer. Coffee cup is something you're seeing. You're not a coffee cup. You're the person seeing the coffee cup. See that? Yeah. So what? You go to the sound of the traffic. You go to the body itself. Prana, the feelings, and the thoughts. Even the darkness of deep sleep. Gross, subtle, 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 subtle. Now, who is it who sees the thoughts, the space between them? Vicharena, by means of investigation. All right, next verse.
Koham kathamidam jatam ko vai karta sya vidhyate upadanam kimasti ha vichara so ayam trishaha. Who am I? How is this world created? Who is the creator? What is the material cause for this? This is the way of inquiry.
So, in Vivekachudamani, he gave us 7 questions. Here we have a different series of questions, equally valid. The first, Koham, who am I? The second one, how has this world come about? And then the third one's very interesting. Who did it? How did it get here? Who did it? And what's the last question?
What is the material cause?
Yes. What is the material cause of the universe? What do we mean by material cause? So in Western theology, in the Semitic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the paradigm for creation usually comes from the Psalms of David. You are the potter, I am the clay. So when a potter makes a pot, we have 3 kinds of cause. The first is the material cause. What's the stuff out of which the pot is made? Clay. Now, if I make a pot, if I make a bowl, if I make a vase, if I make a cup, nama rupa, name and form changes. But the material cause, it's all clay. If you look on the dining room at the China cabinet, you can see I have this very extensive collection of 120-year-old Haviland china, Limoges from France. Porcelain from Limoges is a very special fine clay. Every single piece, from gravy boats to demitasses to dessert plates to serving bowls, all of it, the material cause is the clay from Limoges, France. Material cause. Then we have instrumental cause. For the potter, it's the potter's wheel. Potter takes the clay, has an instrument, potter's wheel, funk, then forms the pot. And then we have what's called the efficient cause. Who did it? The potter. The cow did not come and make the pot. So in this verse, Shankara has asked the question, first of all. Actually, he's asked all three now that I think of it. What is the material cause of the universe? What's it made out of? Who did it? Efficient cause. How has it come about? Instrumental cause. All three questions are asked in this verse. All right, I think this is an excellent place to stop. What verse are we going to take up next week?
13.
13. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions before we end? I know for those of you in Zoom land, this was largely review of last week, but these qualifications of a fit student, we can never review them enough. The reason being, if I'm having trouble in my sadhana, I'm feeling stuck, chances are we're deficient, at least for a time, in one of the four qualifications. Vairagya, viveka, qualities of shama, etc., mumukshutva. Swamiji used to say you need a tune-up. Go look at the qualifications of a fit student. Viveka's cool. Vairagya, I'm pretty attached to it. Okay. Okay, we'll end here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Guru Namaha.